What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to For the Millie Bengals Ravens. We don't get many Thursday night games this good. Prop TwoGun, how are you guys doing? Are you as excited as I am for this game?
I don't know. It's definitely an interesting game. It's going to be obviously probably a high scoring game, so it's very exciting. It's almost like hard to like anything too much because everything else makes sense too.
Yeah, I agree with that. How are you feeling about this one, Prop?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it's a good, would have been a divisional matchup. And then the last few primetime games we have been a little lackluster. So looking for some excitement.
That's definitely true. I really like these island games just because we get so many different types of props released by a lot of these different sites. We'll talk underdog. We're going to talk about the big change that Pick 6 made. Spoiler alert, we're not the biggest fans. So we'll get into that when we do. But why don't we start with some picks? Let's just jump right in, Prop. What is your favorite pick of the night?
My favorite is going to be Deontay Johnson. Now, of course, a lot of the history is not going to support it with him being a member of the Ravens, but I like him to get involved early. And his receiving yards are sitting at 17.5. That could be one catch for him. I think he played 16 or 17 snaps last week, like one snap under Isaiah Likely, who was banged up pretty much all week. I didn't see the final injury report to see if he's going to play or not. But if not, then I expect even more out of Deontay tonight. His first quarter receiving yard, you mentioned that. Well, I'll let you mention that, but I think that's a great one as well. So everything Deontay. I like his receptions, 1.5. I caught it at minus 145, and I played it up to 4 at plus 600.
Love that. And yeah, I completely agree with you. I think part of the reason why the line is so low is because people look and they see that he ran 4 routes last week. But as you said, he played 17 snaps. And the team leader in routes was Bateman at 17. They just weren't throwing the ball. So I think that's also part of why he didn't see the field as much. But should be a much more pass-friendly game for this Baltimore team. Cincinnati has been one of the biggest pass funnels in the league. You mentioned it already, but I will go ahead, bring up underdog here and show you guys my favorite pick of the night and a good place to start because you mentioned 17.5 is the number that you like for Deontay. Underdog, he's 20.5. So I think it's still good, but there's a pick I absolutely love here. More than 0.5 first quarter receiving yards. And check this out. We're getting 1.19x on it. And if you remember from Monday, we had a very similar discussion on DeAndre Hopkins. It was we can't really know for sure what the plan is going to be with Deontay come the second half, come the fourth quarter, when they just have to, call each and every play individual to the play and make sure that everyone on the field knows the play and knows their responsibilities. But we can be pretty confident that they're going to try to get him involved early. First, usually like 15 plays of the game or so are scripted ahead of time. And I think that Deontay is going to be a big part of those scripted plays. So we seemingly just need one reception here, and I absolutely love the chance that Deontay is going to do that. If you remember, Hopkins had 4 receptions in the first 2 drives in the first quarter on that Monday game. So hopefully we see more of the same here from Deontay.
Yes, sir. Hopkins cashed his full game line in the first quarter. It was crazy. So, yeah, I would love to see the same type of thing. I think it's a great matchup for him, too, against this Bengals secondary.
I know you have a few that you like here, TwoGun. Anything that you feel super strong about?
Man, I don't feel as strong about props as you guys do, but I do like Rashad Bateman a lot in this game. I feel like he's going to be kind of the forgotten pass catcher. Mm-hmm. Obviously Deontay Johnson, part of the reason guys like his prop is because it's so low, which means, Bateman's not getting squeezed out yet. Yeah. And with Isaiah Likely out, again, he still should probably have his typical numbers. And if you look at kind of first of all, our tool loves the Bateman number. Mm-hmm. You want to go by the FTN data. And if you just look at his game logs, whatever he's missed that 20.5 or 29, it's by a yard or two, but he has so many games of 50 yard or 40 or 50 yards or more. So I just think it's just, and this is a shootout. Just going with basic logic, why would you think he's going under 29.5 besides saying, oh, he's just going to be on the field less? But I think it's pretty clear Nelson Aguilar is going to be the one that's going to be on the field the least. And they're probably going to have a decent amount of 3 wideout sets with Isaiah Likely out. So I like Bateman a lot. I like him in DFS as well. I like him. I mean, I think I'm just going to go with one lineup. He's not. He'll be in it. Probably not my captain, but he'll be in the lineup. And
I like the call, and I think one interesting thing about it is if you look at the DVOA adjusted fantasy points against numbers, Cincinnati is a very solid matchup for wide receiver ones, plus 14%, wide receiver twos, plus 10%, but then a bad matchup for wide receiver threes, negative 29%. And I think there are going to be snaps where we would probably classify Bateman as that wide receiver 3, but there are also going to be plenty of snaps where he's very clearly the wide receiver 2 and Deontay is off the field. So I do think that this number is an overcorrection, and it's weird to see Bateman go this much lower in his line when Deontay is as low as he is, right? If Deontay was at 37.5 or 38.5, it would make sense to me why Bateman has fallen this much. But he's fallen this much without that. So I think this number is too low on Bateman. The only hesitance I have here is, do you think there's any inverse correlation between an over on Deontay Johnson in the first quarter and Bateman totally, which would make us maybe not want to pair these two together?
See, I just don't think so because the numbers are so low. And I think more than anything, we have to remember Lamar's throwing the ball a lot this year. We all used to think of like, oh, this is a running-based team. This is not a run-based team. They are so effective throwing the ball. Mm-hmm. Lamar Jackson has 280 yards or more in practically every those last 5 games. Mm-hmm. The guy's throwing like 300 yards a game. Yeah, there's a couple of games from earlier in the season when he threw for 150 or 180 yards. And it's totally possible this game is like that. But the game's total says shootout. Cincinnati offense is definitely better than their defense. I think Lamar's going to throw the ball, and he's going to throw it to all these guys. But asking for 30 yards from Bateman and 20 yards from Deontay Johnson just isn't that much. That's a fifth. That's less than a fifth of his total yardage that he's been throwing lately.
Yeah. Boston here saying he appreciates us. We appreciate you right back. Thanks everybody for tuning in and for joining the live chat. Remember, you can drop questions in there as much as you want. We'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. One last thing I want to say here is I think it's worth noting. It's not just that Baltimore has been more pass heavy. It's also that they've been very kind of specific in their game plan for their opponent. And again, Cincinnati is a very, very severe pass funnel. So we should expect a pretty aggressive pass offense game plan here from Baltimore. All right, Prop, where are you going to take us next?
Well, I didn't want to steal your thunder with Burton.
Go ahead and take it because I got another one.
Oh, okay, cool. So I like the over 17.5 receiving yards for him. The 2 games that he's played in, he had 1 catch in both of them, and it was a 40-yard catch both times. Yeah. I think we see something kind of similar tonight. I think the game script fits that, right? We expect Cincinnati to be trailing. Spread was 6.5, is down to 5.5 or 6 on some certain books now. While I do like the Bengals to cover that spread, I do see them trailing, pretty much throughout the game. And this Ravens secondary has been the worst in the NFL across some of the metrics we've seen. So I like Burrow to be active through the air tonight. He just seen him and almost threw for did he almost throw for 400 yards? Let me fact check that.
It was a huge game, and you can see it here on the screen.
392.
I brought up the DVOA adjusted fantasy points against numbers. You can see Baltimore is like Cincinnati, just this huge pass funnel, big advantage for quarterbacks. But check out these numbers: plus 41% for wide receiver ones, plus 33% for wide receiver twos, which is what we're going to classify Burton as in this game. And one other thing that we've seen teams do whenever T. Higgins is out is they just say, screw what our typical strategy is. Remember what the Giants did to Cincinnati. We are going to take away the explosive plays from Jamar Chase and the Cincinnati offense. And if they do that, then we see, a less than 41% boost for wide receiver ones and probably an even larger boost for wide receiver twos. Remember how easy it was for T. Higgins in that Giants game. You could see Baltimore take a pretty similar strategy here without T. Higgins involved, and that would mean a lot of really good things for Burton here, which is the way that I sort of expect this game to go. So I love this decision as well. And another thing that I would say there is we had this like really weird missed practice last week from Burton. I think it was on the Saturday. So he ends up being a disciplinary inactive on the Sunday. But they said he's going to play this week. And let's remember, he was said to be like a huge part of the game plan.
Prominent role, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So we should see some of that here in a matchup where they very much need his explosive playability. And Baltimore is dead last in the NFL in terms of allowing deep completions and deep completion yards. So this matchup is outstanding for Burton. It's perfect for his skill set. And obviously the opportunity should be there as well. So 16.5 seems way too low to me too. And I think the 12.5 for longest reception is also too low. So, I mean, I'm
kind of look at this the same way I look at Calvin Austin, right? If he gets his receiving yards, it's because he cashes longest reception too.
Yeah.
So I'm not mad at that. I can't believe it's
12.5. I think, man, who was it? Deontay? Let me see. There was one guy that, yeah. So let's take a look right here at Deontay. Like we see the over 1.5 receptions is at 0.84x. So for those of you, like I think watching, I think this can sometimes be just a good way that you pick between different props that are available. If he gets 2 receptions, he's not a super low ADOT guy. He's pretty explosive. Should have a lot of one-on-one opportunities here in Baltimore. So we should expect his yards per reception to be significantly higher than 10.5. So for him to be so likely, according to Underdog, to have at least 2 receptions, it doesn't make sense why his number is all the way down to 20.5. So I think that's another way to look at it. With Burton, going back to him, we see just even money on that receiving number. And so it's a little bit tougher of a decision of what to take. But I think my lean is just on the 16.5 number instead of the longest reception. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I will go with that. Just, to have the security. I do think he'll get more than 1 reception today. And I do think he'll go over the longest reception. But I think, with it only being a 4-yard difference, why not just take the full receiving yard line?
Yeah, I mean, if he has like an 11-yard reception or a 9-yard reception, you're going to be pretty mad at yourself. And that's obviously within the range of outcomes. So I like this as well. All right, where am I going to go next? I'm going to go back to the Ravens, and I'm going to go with Derrick Henry over 20.5 for his longest rush. And in game 1 this year, his longest run was 9 yards. Last game, it was 20 yards. He has gone significantly over this number in every single game in between those two. And the theory, I think, is just pretty self-explanatory. Like, Derrick Henry has been an explosive run machine in his entire career, not just from a rate standpoint, but he gets fed so much that it's just like it's only a matter of time before he breaks one a lot of the time. Now, Cincinnati has been really good in their open field yards allowed. When you go to the ftnfantasy.com DVOA numbers, you see adjusted line yards. And there are 2 ways to look at this. Number one is just how many yards are the offensive line and the defensive line just allowing to happen. And then there's open field yards, which cuts more about tackling and how many guys you're committing in the box and how aggressive your run fits are. And of course, how explosive the opposing running back is. And we know that nobody breaks off those explosive runs better than Derrick Henry, maybe Saquon, but Henry has been this guy for years and years. Cincinnati's been really good at limiting those explosive runs. The problem is when you face Lamar Jackson, a lot of the reason why you can be a good team at preventing those explosive plays is because your safeties do a great job. Your linebackers do a great job. But against the Ravens, those guys have to be paying attention to Lamar Jackson, asking, did Lamar Jackson keep it as he's running to the right side of the field? Or does Derrick Henry have it as he's running to the left side of the field? And when you're that just like half step slow to react, that's when Derrick Henry breaks off those big ones. So as good as Cincinnati has been in that regard, the first time they played, Derrick Henry had a 51-yard run. So I think we're going to see more explosive runs from Henry tonight, and this 20.5 number, it just strikes me as way too low no matter who the opponent is. What do you think of this TwoGun?
That's me. I just feel like when it comes to like football theory, I always go with you. Like, I'm not the football guy. You're more of the football guy. I'm more of the like game theory, like I don't have an opinion, man. Like I would just go with what you think. So I'm gonna keep it real.
Sounds like we got people in the chat thinking the same thing. Prop, what do you think of this Derrick Henry? Just like the thought on the longest rush. I think it should be more like 29.5.
Yeah, it's like, and can you hear me? Is my mic good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So with the dynamic, it's the Bengals are allowing the most rushing yards to quarterbacks this season per FTN's DVOA. Not the DVOA tool. I'm sorry, the defense versus position tool. It shows I think they're allowing like 41 yards per game to opposing quarterbacks. So with them being so weak in that category and Lamar being the best rushing quarterback in the league, I think that makes the RPO even more dangerous, and which is why big holes can open up for Henry. So I love it.
I've got Stats Hub up here. You kind of gave me a good reminder there. I want to show people how to use Stats Hub to look at the quarterbacks rushing, but then also scramble yards, because I think separating like scrambles from designed runs from quarterbacks also makes a lot of sense. And the way we do this, we go to rushing. Now we can go to defense, and then we're going to go to the advanced filters. Whoops, I got to hit the advanced filtering. Rushing, run concepts, and now you see this scramble here, and I'm just going to turn scramble to true, apply that, and now you can see how defenses have done against scrambles. And so here you can see the Giants dead last in scramble yards allowed. Let's go find Cincinnati. So 13th, not terrible, not great. But to your point, it's more about just like they understand that they have to maybe do a better job at controlling the designed runs from quarterbacks, which means Lamar hands it to Henry, but then maybe keeps, and Baltimore again is going to have, or Cincinnati again is going to have to pay attention and make sure that the ball's actually in Henry's hands. And that, man, it just opens up so many of those big creases. And like, there's no better running back at taking a half step advantage and turning it into 60 yards down the sideline, because when a safety or a linebacker is half a step behind Henry, they're either blown by or they're on the ground after a stiff arm. So that's why we see so many of those explosive runs. All right, guys, we are at 4 now. Let's see if we can turn this into a 6-pick play. Reminder to everyone, we like the 3-pick plays and we like the 6-pick plays over on Underdog. That's where the payouts are their best. So if we can't get to 6, I usually just kind of say, all right, I've got 3, 4, maybe even 5 picks that I like. I'll just mix and match among 3-pick plays. But if I can get to 6, I'll just run that 6-pick play and take the 25x payout to first, where you can also do better than doubling your money going 5 of 6. So I'll go to you, Prop. Do you have a 5th pick for us?
Yeah, I will go with Joe Burrow over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Ravens giving up the second most passing touchdowns per game, 2.0. So it's right there at that number. The game script already fits it. The Ravens have been a top 3 defense against the run all season. So I think that'll continue, and Burrow should be able to carve up the secondary.
I've got bad news for you. I love this, but man, this is at 0.74.
0.74.
So,
wow.
Yeah. For everyone's context, this is at 12x. So if we took just like a regular pick, it would go to 18.8, 9.4 on the flex. At 0.74, it drops all the way to 15.9x. So that's a tough sell. I definitely agree. And if you can find this elsewhere at a much better number,
so let's
I would
do this.
definitely do, because
let's do his longest completion over 37.5.
I'm very much on board with that. If you remember, he had a bunch of them against Baltimore the first time out, and as much as like I was looking at the Jamar Chase 26.5 longest completion earlier, and I actually thought that would be great too. The problem there is, as we talked about, there's a pretty decent chance that Baltimore is just going to say, screw it, we're just not going to let that happen from Jamar Chase. But it can absolutely happen from Burton, can happen from Chase still. It can happen from a Chase Brown screen pass, right? Lots of ways to make this happen. So I like this call. I like this number. I think this one should probably be somewhere in the 40s. All right,
Ravens allowing the second highest yards per completion too, so it's perfect.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, let me bring Stats Hub up once again so we can take a look at this. Here, I'll even share this while I do it. So receiving, advanced, actually I'll go air yards for this one. Receiving, air yards, defense, and now we can just scroll is that what I want? No, I wanted passing air yards. Sorry about that. Passing, air yards, defense. Scroll over to the right. Deep completions, you can see here, Baltimore allowing the most.
Beautiful.
How about deep passing yards? You can see Baltimore second only to Jacksonville. My goodness, Jacksonville allowing just an enormous amount of explosive plays in the passing game. So yeah, as you said, like this is just a fantastic matchup for explosive plays for those deep passes. We hope that it's Burton, we're also getting some nice correlation there. Not obviously, since this is still up at 21.4x, we're not getting penalized too much, if at all, for that correlation. So very much on board with this pick. All right, TwoGun, can you find us a sixth pick? Putting you on the spot here.
Bateman in there, right?
Say that again.
I think we have Bateman in there, right?
We do.
My contribution. I don't know.
I've got one I really like. If you want me to just take that one instead.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to go to Chase Brown under 57.5 receiving yards. Remember, we brought up the DVOA fantasy points against Tool earlier. We saw that Baltimore, big pass funnel. They are great with adjusted line yards. They are also number 1 in the NFL in open field yards allowed. So if Chase Brown can't get the explosive runs, I think he's going to have a tough time getting to this number. We had him projected at 47.5 rushing yards, despite only projecting Khalil Herbert for 3 carries. There's a chance that Herbert's even more involved than that. And I don't think there's much of a chance that that Chase Brown is like the only running back who gets a carry for Cincinnati. Those 3 Herbert carries are the only non-Chase Brown carries that we are projecting for Cincinnati other than Joe Burrow. So I think we pretty much have his ceiling in the rushing share projected, and we have him at 47.5 rushing yards. So I think this number is just too high. What do you think of that one, Prop?
Yeah, I'm not mad at that. I was gonna say Gesicki, since we're not doing like a DFS thing where we got to fade the popular guys. I think he's in a great spot as well. But I'm not mad at the Chase Brown under either with how great the Ravens rush defense is.
Yeah, a note on Gesicki here. I definitely think if I were to play this, I would go with the higher than 4.5 receptions for 1.04x. We actually have him projected slightly below this number. We have him at 48.7 yards. So I agree with you. I think that receptions number is good, but I don't think it's quite as good as the Chase Brown number. So let's recap this 6-pick play, and then we can kind of move on, maybe discuss this pick 6 change. But Deontay Johnson higher than 0.5 first quarter receiving yards. That gives us a 1.19x multiplier. Rashad Bateman over 29.5 receiving yards. Jermaine Burton higher than 16.5 receiving yards. Henry over 20.5 longest rush. It looks like that is grayed out right now, but if you refresh, it's probably back. Joe Burrow over 37.5 for his longest completion. And then Chase Brown under 57.5 rushing yards. I also think, guys, that we have actually put a pretty good amount of correlation here. We're telling a story of, these, particularly on the Cincinnati side, that Baltimore, their pass funnel nature is just going to make Zach Taylor and the Cincinnati offense just lean into that, throw the ball a lot. They're not going to be running. They're going to be throwing it all around the yard. And also works with the story that, Baltimore makes a little bit of a concerted effort to take away Jamar Chase. So I think everything that we have here makes sense together and individually is also really good. Makes me a big fan of this 6-pick play.
What's the play we have for Bateman again? Like his yards or reception?
Just over 29.5 receiving yards.
Cool.
And I want to see what is his longest reception, because that's also an interesting one. 17.5 for his longest reception. TwoGun, this was your pick. Do you have a preference between the two?
You might as well just go with the 29.5, because it's like if he hits the 17.5, he's probably going to hit that 29.5.
Yeah, I think it's a really good call. If he goes over 17.5, you basically just need one more reception, and that should be there for Bateman. Let's see. He has been over this.
7 out of 9.
Yeah, 7 out of 9 for his longest reception. But, of course, he's been targeted at least 4 times in all but one game. So if we're expecting the targets to come down a little bit, that longest reception is going to be harder for him to hit as well. So I think I'm in agreement here, TwoGun, that we already have the best Bateman pick here at over 29.5 receiving yards. Anything else here from a pick standpoint, Prop? Maybe you have some other thoughts just in the prop market over on sportsbooks. Maybe you have some other ladders that you're interested in tonight that you can share with the people.
No, nothing else. Like I said, I do like Burrow's passing touchdown. Probably going to put together, a same game parlay, but nothing else. I got the Deontay ladder. I like Burton, the receiving yards over, and then I do like Gesicki tonight. Nice. I would like him. Like if I did like a touchdown parlay, I was thinking Lamar, Gesicki, and Jamar Chase. because everybody's gonna put Henry in the touchdown score. So
Yep.
I'd rather go with
I
Lamar
like
to get
that.
better odds.
I like that. All right, let's see. I had one other question for you. Do you like laddering Jermaine Burton's yards as well? Because that was a thought that I had. I don't know what's available for him though. There might not even be those options up yet.
Yeah, I'm still waiting, but I was thinking of taking him for at least 40 because it should be crazy. What is receiving yards being at 16.5? Checking FanDuel right now, he's still not on there. But yeah, if I did a ladder, I would do like.
It reminds
40.
me a little bit of the Hopkins play the other night in the sense that we don't know how involved in the game plan he's going to be, but there exists a chance that he's like a featured part of this game plan in a great matchup and ends up with 8 catches for 110 yards or something like that, something crazy, right? And obviously it could also be 3 catches for 80 yards. So the big playability is certainly there. It makes me very interested in his ladders if they're actually posted. But books might be very aware of that thought and just be a little bit conservative on what they offer for his alternate yards. So
hang on, I got it. I found him. So Bet365 has his 16.5 receiving yards minus 110. The 25 plus yards is plus 150, and 50 plus yards is plus 550.
I like all of those.
Yeah.
I like those quite a bit. All right, guys. Why don't we speak for a moment on pick 6? I think people were really enjoying the game, and we were part of that. We were really enjoying the game. They made a change from Monday to Wednesday where the payouts are now they have prioritized the floor payout. So if you recall, like I've already hit a couple 6-pick plays this year on the main slates that paid out something crappy like 11x or 15x. And they've raised the minimum payout. So on 6-pick plays, the lowest you could possibly get is 20x. The problem is, in order to do this, they raised the rake to 40%. 40% rake is insane. So I wish we had something more fun to tell you guys than we're not going to be playing it tonight. Maybe we can find some angles on the main slate. We'll discuss that in the Pick'em channel of our Discord over on ftnfantasy.com. But for these island games, I can't justify playing into 40% rake. I know you're with me on that one too.
Yeah, Mama always said, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it, type situation.
Don't worry, I have the mute button ready in case I need to use it.
With what I do. I say I'm going to play a lot. Now, if I lose, I don't say shit. If I win, I'm like, oh, look how much I won. But I'm never like, oh, I'm going to play this, and I don't play it. So yeah, I'm not really playing it. I'm not going to play it tonight. I don't even think I'm going to play it until I'm going to let in fairness, I'm going to let the Pick 16 digest what they've done. And maybe it works for them, but as a high volume, kind of sharpier player, it kind of like I don't see myself being able to win. Yeah. So I'm not going to play it. And, for other people, maybe they still want to play it. In the main slate, if you correlate, perfectly like quarterback, wide receiver, quarterback, wide receiver, your payout on pick 6 will actually still be probably higher than underdog. So for a certain type of game in NFL, it works for a certain group of people, but then they might change that. You know what I'm saying? If they go to correlate. Because what I really liked about pick 6 was that it's not against the house. That you're playing against other people. But when all of a sudden they have to intervene more and have to pony up the payouts, well, then they're incentivized to not have to do that, right? Like they'd rather be 40% rake than a 12% effective rake. And I don't want to get into all that. I'm just going to say we'll see what happens. Hopefully they change it again. But if some people want to play it, that's I'm not going to tell you not to for sure. Go ahead. I'm just not really doing it myself right now.
Yep, I pretty much said everything that I needed to say as well. So with that, why don't we jump into Showdown, and I'll start with the fantastic write-up and charts from Caleb in his Showdown article over on ftnfantasy.com. So let's start here with the optimal team builds, and we're seeing pretty even on Ravens, 5-1, 4-2, and 3-3. So I'll start with you, TwoGun. What is your impression of what the field is going to do tonight? How much do you think that they're going to try to kind of build for a shootout that uses some skill players from both teams versus just kind of leaning towards a Ravens onslaught since Baltimore has dominated so many teams this year?
Let me look through. It's funny. I try not to think about fading sometimes as much as I think about who I want to use. Like I talk about, I want to use Bateman. I have 2 showdown lineups and he's in both of them. And I just don't think he's going to be popular. So it's like I'll naturally not use other people. But in terms of their structure, I think I could see people going all over the place. I don't really think that they're going to be super Ravens heavy or mixed. I think people have both. One thing people always do is over-own Justin Tucker.
Yes.
They just over-own Justin Tucker. And I think that's something they're going to do as a way of saving money. Instead of changing the lineup structure, they're just going to use a stud and they're going to use Justin Tucker. So I think that's probably the biggest lineup creation leak, especially if they're using Lamar Jackson. Like Lamar Jackson will be in 90% plus of the lineups. I'm going to use him in both my lineups. I'm not fading Lamar Jackson. But the way to fade Lamar Jackson is with Justin Tucker. So you know what? If you're like, I'm fading Lamar Jackson, he's not going to get that many touchdowns. It's going to be Justin Tucker and Derrick Henry.
Yes.
Okay. That's cool. Go for it. I totally approve of that. I'm not doing that. I would consider doing that if I had more than 2 lineups, but I'm not doing that. But that's not how people are going to use Justin Tucker. They're just going to throw him in all their other lineups. So that's my perception of what people are doing and how they might be making a league.
Yeah. Albert made a comment here. It almost seems like they don't want you to play pick 6. They do. They're making a miscalculation of what the average player is looking for. They think that people are more inclined to just view the minimum payout as important, but people want the big payouts, right? And if you're getting a big payout now, you're playing into 40% rake. So it's misunderstood. We're actually going to talk with them this coming week, and hopefully we make some good changes along with them and kind of save the game because it can be really fun.
It may work. Maybe people like the change. I don't know. But my quick rants is 9 years ago, before Alex was born, there was that big scandal where a DraftKings employee went on FanDuel and do they have insider information? And what was lost is when people when people at the websites can't play their own game, or can't play games on other sites that are similar to it, is that sometimes they just don't get it. They don't understand why who's playing the game and why they're playing the game. They're a little bit more disconnected with the customer. And we've seen a little bit less innovation in the DFS space because of it. And I think that might be the case here. Maybe they're right. Maybe people, all they care about is the minimum payouts, and maybe it ends up working out just fine. I don't know. But we'll move on.
Yeah, and with that, Prop, I'll tell you what my lean here is. When I look at these optimal builds, I think that 3-3 teams are going to be by far the most popular, and then I think 4-2 and 2-4 teams are going to be popular. I don't think an onslaught is going to be popular in any direction. So I look at this chart and I think, all right, I want 5 Ravens and 1 Bengal. What do you think the likelihood is of a Ravens performance that makes that the optimal route to go?
Well, 5 Ravens, 1 Bengal?
Yeah.
I don't see it happening at all.
Really?
I think it's going to be a competitive because if you're doing that, then you're expecting a blowout pretty much, right?
It can be a blowout. Sometimes it's less about the amount of points scored and it's more about the amount of plays that are run, right? So if remember, it's PPR scoring. So let's say Baltimore just controls the game. I think the last time these two teams played, Baltimore ran 77 plays to Cincinnati's 65. But Baltimore has some games where they run 70 plays and their opponent runs 40. And if you get into that kind of script, it might be, a 31-17 game or a 31-20 game. But man, it's especially then because let's say Cincinnati scores 17 points and Chase Brown has 2 touchdowns, or Jamar Chase has 1 touchdown and 120 yards. You can get concentrated enough production on that one team that's only run 40 plays and 15 of them went to one guy nobody else on the team ends up being anywhere close to optimal. Meanwhile, Baltimore has Derrick Henry scoring and going over 100 yards. Zay Flowers is over 100 yards. Mark Andrews has caught a touchdown. Bateman has 80 yards, right? And, of course, then you want Lamar Jackson. So there are definitely ways that a 5-1 works where it's not a blowout, but one of two things has to be true. Either it has to be a blowout or Baltimore just has to have one of those like big just game control type of games.
Okay, well, if that's the case, I can see that, but I honestly I would like the 3-3 option better.
It's fair. I mean, certainly it's going to be a really popular build. So I think what I'll say there is if you are going 3-3, just make sure that you have some contrarian options, right? If you're using 3 popular players from each team, you're probably going to be duplicated and you're going to have a tough time getting one of those big paydays. But if you can build a 3-3 that uses some contrarian players, now you still have a clear path to the top. So with that, let's jump into the specific plays. And why don't we start with our favorite captains? Let me see if I can find the captain optimal. So here we have, you can see an edge on Lamar Jackson. Anybody whose optimal percentage is higher than their projected captain ownership makes pretty good sense as the captain. So once again, the simulation data here showing some pretty good signs to Baltimore. Both Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry slightly under-owned as captain. Zay Flowers, once again, looks like no love for Mark Andrews. Deontay Johnson could be an interesting captain. Maybe we see the DeAndre Hopkins game happen for Deontay. The thing that stands out to me, Chase Brown looking like the worst captain on the slate. So I'll start here with you, TwoGun. Are you, knowing that Chase Brown projects so poorly as a captain, are you also then inclined to fade him as a flex play, just hoping all of those Chase Brown lineups just kind of burn?
Yes. Like I said, I have 2 lineups. I do not have Chase Brown in either lineup. I might be adding one lineup I'm pretty set on with Joe Burrow as a captain. The other one I'm a little bit more mixed on what I'm going to go with. But either way, I just don't see myself using Chase Brown. I don't think the Bengals are going to be able to just run this ball. I doubt they're going to be ahead. I mean, maybe they'll be ahead, but I don't like. You want to use the running back generally, like Chase Brown killed it last week because the Bengals just demolished, their opponent. So I think Chase Brown's the most obvious fade, especially at his price. And I'm definitely have no interest. And generally, a running back at captain works best when that team is blowing out the other team.
Yep.
So that's why Derrick Henry makes sense. Mainly in a 5-1, which, yeah, if you want to, I mean, I approve of that. I might do that. I have a 3-3 with Joe Burrow as captain, and I'm doing a 4-2 or 5-1 Ravens is my other one. And I'm still a little unsure what I'm going to do with that lineup. But I just don't. I see no room for Chase Brown being my captain, and honestly, he's like the first one I'm going to leave off my team, off my roster.
Burrow makes a ton of sense as the captain. As you can see here, 10% of the time he is optimal. Only 3% of the time we are projecting people to be using him as the captain. We spoke a lot about some of these Cincinnati options earlier in the picks. I'll go to you here, Prop. Do you feel like Gesicki, Burton are also great plays here on Showdown as flex options with Joe Burrow? Or if you're going Joe Burrow captain, are you hoping that most of it goes through Jamar Chase?
No, I would do it hoping that the other guys show up just to be contrarian, give you a better chance to win something. So I will go with Burrow, and then Gesicki first, then Burton, just because we expect a good workload. We don't know what we're going to get from him, whereas to Gesicki without T. Higgins is proven in the 4-game sample size this season.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I'll actually add to it too. If Burrow's your captain, you need the production to go elsewhere, not just to Jamar Chase, because if Chase has that same type of game that he had last time against them, he's the optimal captain, right? And so if you're playing Burrow as the captain, Chase can still produce. He can still help Burrow become the optimal captain, but you've got to have other guys. You need that production to get spread around. So if I had Burrow as my captain, I think I would definitely lock in Gesicki and Burton as the next 2 guys. I'd also be totally fine adding Jamar Chase to those 2 because Chase could have 110 yards, no touchdowns. Gesicki gets the touchdowns. Burton also has a big yardage game. Maybe he scores something like that. Burrow goes 303, maybe adds 30 yards on the ground, something like that, and he's going to be the optimal captain. Also, certainly a discounted price in comparison to Jamar Chase. So Prop, do you have a lean on who your captain would be here tonight?
From either team?
Either team, yeah, whatever build you want.
Oh man, it will be between Lamar and Burrow. Honestly, I would go with Burrow. Burrow's projected ownership is low, right? 3.2%.
Yeah.
I would go with Burrow.
Very, yeah. I think I'm so on board with the Burrow play. The way I basically see two really solid builds here. I see a 4-2 Cincinnati stack with Burrow as the captain, or a 5-1 Baltimore stack where you can either use Lamar or Derrick Henry as the captain. I almost think I like Lamar there just because we've seen enough of his games where it's a blowout, but he's also thrown for 4 or 5 touchdowns. And I think most Baltimore onslaughts would just immediately default to Derrick Henry as the captain. So I always like when you have a contrarian build and a contrarian captain, because then you can just use like all the best values, the best plays, whatever fits the lineup well. So I think that's probably going to be my build tonight. As I've said before, I'm a single entry guy, so I've got to make this decision, but I know TwoGun builds multiple lineups, and anyone out there, you can build 2 lineups, 3 lineups, however many scripts that you want. Just remember, each lineup that you build should tell a different story about how this game goes. And if you do that, you're going to be in pretty good shape. All right, let's see. Let's go to some cheap value options here on the Showdown. Any favorite values for you, TwoGun?
Not really, I guess, Jermaine Burton, mainly because he's a higher ceiling, but I don't think we really have any idea how much he's going to play.
Yeah.
So I don't really love any of the values. I mean, I don't consider Bateman a value, honestly. At 5,800, to me, that's kind of more mid-price. So I think Mark Andrews, obviously at 4,200, is kind of an obvious value.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use him probably at least in one lineup. But
you know who I think is also a fairly obvious value, but it's worth mentioning is Charlie Kolar, $600. Like that's as cheap as anybody that I've recommended all season. But we know how many dual tight end looks that Baltimore likes to employ. Kolar's already been somewhat involved in this offense in 3 tight end sets. So we've seen he can produce. We know he'll be on the field tonight a decent amount. And Cincinnati has been a fantastic matchup for tight ends. We're projecting about 24% flex ownership for him. So this is by no means a contrarian call. But I think at $600, he's such a good value that he's definitely worth looking into, particularly if you're going to a Baltimore onslaught where they are going to be in more 2 tight end sets trying to run the game out. And we know how much they like their play action late in games. So I think Kolar makes a ton of sense tonight. Prop, what do you think of Kolar? Sorry, say that again, Prop.
I was saying his props popped up kind of late too. Wait, what was he at? He's at 13.5 receiving yards.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at it. That's something I feel like you had to sweat out all game too.
Yeah,
but
let me share.
From a DFS perspective, though, only $600. You can't go wrong there.
Yeah, let me see if we've got his touchdowns in here yet, because I think he might be an interesting touchdown bet. Plus 470 for an anytime touchdown over on FanDuel. I like that number. I like 55-1 on 2+ touchdowns. Let's see. I don't think we have the. There we do. Score first touchdown plus 850. That's weird. I would think first touchdown would be higher than 850.
It should be higher than that.
Is 470. So I'm not going to mess with the first touchdown. Maybe that's something like people just always like to go backup tight ends for first touchdown. So that's a really bad number. But the plus 470 I like, and the 55-1 I like as well for the 2+ touchdowns. It sounds like you're on board with those, Prop.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that, especially for the value. And we know we see the Bengals have been that bad against tight ends. So because he's a tight end, right? Pretty much, yeah, backup tight end.
Yeah.
So
yep.
Yeah.
We also have a question here. Alex, is Burton projecting for much flex ownership? Let me bring that back up. I don't even know what his salary is. $2,200. We only have him projected for 9.3% flex ownership. I love that. I love that so much that I don't think he makes a ton of sense as being like the only Cincinnati guy that I used if I do go with a 5-1 stack. So I like Burton at 9.3% and $2,200 so much that it might be worth me just flipping my script and going with the Joe Burrow captain, just because not only is Burrow super low owned and super under owned in our estimation, but Burton is also extremely under owned as a flex and pairs so perfectly with Burrow captain. So I've got decisions to make for my showdown lineup for sure. TwoGun, can we convince you to jump on board on these touchdown props for Kolar?
Why not?
I knew that was going to be the reaction. He couldn't be less interested in touchdown props. This is a good question.
It makes sense, though, from a DFS standpoint. If he's like $600 and he's decent chance of scoring a touchdown, like he's probably going to be optimal a lot of the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we also have a question here about what we expect from Keaton Mitchell tonight. I'll tell you this. I think there's somewhat of an expectation from people that Keaton Mitchell is going to just jump in and kind of take a lot of Justice Hill's role. I think Baltimore loves Justice Hill and what he brings to the offense. I think what we're going to see from Keaton Mitchell is more of like a very abbreviated Devon Achane role where they have packages and design plays for him to use his speed, to use his game-breaking ability. I think we might even see packages where he's on the field with Derrick Henry. You know, they fake it one way to Mitchell, they give it to Henry, and then Lamar can also choose to keep and go up the middle or something, kind of create some nightmare situations for defenses in that regard. But I think it'll be a pretty small package of plays. So if you're playing him, you're probably relying on that explosive play from Keaton Mitchell. So I don't have a ton of interest in him, but I do think he's more important in a real football perspective than a fantasy football perspective. Prop, I'll turn it over to you here. Are you seeing Keaton Mitchell the same way, or do you have some interest in him either from a prop perspective or here in Showdown?
Well, his rushing yards came out at 13.5, so it's low, but I kind of want to see what his workload is. Would it be in the first week that he's played, and it's been a while. So it's not like I'm betting on a premier back like Nick Chubb or something like that, or McCaffrey coming back. Like I'll bet on them that first game. But a guy like Keaton Mitchell, I'm good on waiting to see how he looks and what his workload is, especially because they have Justice Hill and they just paid him. So
yeah, I like the callback to Nick Chubb too, because we've seen Chubb look like, let's face it. I mean, I don't think you could find a bigger Nick Chubb fan than I am, but we've seen him look not exactly his usual explosive self. And if Keaton Mitchell has lost his explosibility at all, if it's going to take him time to get that part of his game back, then there's not really a path to success for him here tonight. So I agree with that, and I think it's a great callback. Any closing thoughts here on the showdown from you, TwoGun?
No, I mean, I think we covered it pretty well, to be honest. It's just kind of think about your lineup and what it's saying, and don't just throw players in there because of the salary fits. It's generally how I would say with your showdown lineup. And I think a lot of different ways work. And just kind of remember who's better in what type of games, and that's fine.
Yep. PropGod, are you live at 7:00 again for Trenches?
Yep, 30 minutes. Thanks, Eric. He said nice throwback Padres cap. Appreciate that.
It is. You've got something nice on every single time. I don't know where you find all this swag, but it's always something good.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So remember, 7:00 Eastern, Prop will be live with Trenches. We will be back, TwoGun and myself, on Sunday. And then, of course, the three of us will be back once again on Monday, 5:30 Eastern, for that free stream, the Sunday show for subscribers only, DFS only, preparing you guys for the main slate. So if you don't yet have access to that, ftnfantasy.com/pricing. Everybody here who's watching along, whether you're watching because you love what Prop brings to the table, what we bring to the table on Underdog, on DFS, whatever, if you guys haven't given those main slate DraftKings a big try, you should. You guys are all going to absolutely love them. So when you do, give us a chance as well at FTN Fantasy for our DFS product. With that, thank you all for tuning in. We will catch you next time.